Tonight, Donald Trump takes aim at Canada again, this time on the world stage.
Earlier this year, the United States made a decision that caught everyone's attention. Washington officially lifted the 25% tariff on most imports from Canada: cars, metals, food, and a long list of other goods. But hidden deep within that policy was one curious exception: oil. Specifically, oil from Alberta. Unlike everything else, Alberta's crude was taxed at only 10%. On paper, it looked like a minor technical detail, but in reality, it revealed one of America's greatest weaknesses: the uncomfortable truth that the United States simply cannot afford to alienate the one country that holds the key to its energy lifeline. Because when it comes to keeping America's refineries running, Canada isn't just important. It's essential. Canada is the fourth largest oil and gas producer in the world. It exports nearly 97% of that energy south to the United States. And here's the part no one likes to admit: 60% of all oil and gas used in the U.S. comes from Canada. The dependency goes both ways. Canada needs U.S. consumers, but the U.S. needs Canadian oil even more. And that's exactly why this 10% tariff was never about kindness. It was about survival. The U.S. produces roughly 13 million barrels of oil per day, but it consumes 19 million. The difference, a staggering 6 million barrels, comes mostly from one place: Canada. Across the Midwest, nearly 3/4 of the crude processed by American refineries originates in Alberta. And these facilities aren't just connected to Alberta's oil sands, they're built for them. Refineries in what's known as PADD2 and PADD3, the industrial heart of America, were designed decades ago to handle heavy, high-sulfur crude, the kind that flows from Alberta's oil sands. Engineers call these plants rigid systems, meaning they can't simply switch to lighter oil from Texas or Saudi Arabia without spending billions in redesigns and retrofits. If that Canadian oil flow were ever disrupted, entire industrial belts across the U.S. could grind to a halt. Gasoline prices would skyrocket. Factories would shut down. And Washington knows it. So why is America putting tariffs on everything, except the one thing it can't live without? Because buried beneath this trade policy is a geopolitical reality. Canada holds a trump card of its own. Literally a trump card, buried under its feet. It's called Alberta Energy. Alberta's reserves are massive, some of the largest oil and gas deposits on Earth, larger and far more accessible than the declining reserves inside the U.S. And this is where the bigger picture starts to emerge. American refineries don't just use Canadian oil. They're entirely dependent on it. If Washington tried to replace that supply with oil from South America or the Middle East, costs would soar and supply chains would collapse. Longer shipping routes, higher refining expenses, and chemical mismatches that could throw production off completely. Some refineries would have to scale back. Others would shut down altogether. And for American drivers, that would mean one thing: gas prices exploding overnight. As one energy analyst once put it, without Canada, the United States couldn't even operate its own refineries. But as Washington finds itself trapped in this web of dependence, something very different has been unfolding north of the border. For decades, Alberta was seen as a silent cog in America's energy machine. But now, that cog is beginning to turn on its own. In May 2024, a project years in the making finally came to life. The Trans Mountain expansion, known as TMX, it boosted the pipeline's capacity to nearly 890,000 barrels a day, almost 3 times its previous limit. For the first time in history, Canadian crude could reach global markets without passing through U.S. territory. And when those tankers started, leaving the Pacific coast, filled with Alberta oil bound for Asia, the global map of energy trade quietly shifted. By mid-2025, Canada's non-U.S. oil exports had surged to nearly 400,000 barrels per day, up from just 80,000 the year before. And the biggest new customer? China. Yes, China, the world's largest energy consumer, is now becoming one of Canada's fastest-growing energy partners. This isn't just trade, it's strategy. Every barrel sent west instead of south is a political message. It's Canada saying we finally have options. For the first time, Alberta isn't just selling oil, it's shaping global energy politics. Each shipment represents leverage, influence, and independence, and that's where the paradox lies. Every new tariff Washington places on Canada, in steel, cars, or any other sector, ultimately hurts the U.S. itself. Economists call this the mirror wall. Every blow America throws reflects right back at its own economy. If the U.S. ever imposed a 25% tariff on Canadian crude, the result would be instant chaos. Gas prices could spike by 15–20%, especially in the Midwest. Refineries would struggle to absorb costs, and inflation, the very thing Washington is desperate to control, would surge again, because America can't pivot overnight. Its pipelines, refineries, and energy infrastructure are built around one supplier, Canada. It's what energy experts now call a self-imposed barrier, a wall the U.S. built around its own flexibility. And this interdependence goes beyond oil. Every year, the U.S. imports about 33 terawatt-hours of electricity from Canada, enough to power millions of homes and high-demand sectors like AI computing, defense, and heavy industry. Cut that off! And the ripple effects would reach deep into America's manufacturing heartland. Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, where factories depend on that Canadian power. The tariffs meant to protect American jobs are quietly destroying them. A cycle of economic self-sabotage. While Washington tightens barriers, Ottawa is taking a different path, one based on flexibility, neutrality, and selective cooperation. Prime Minister Mark Carney calls it ending Canada's one-way energy dependency. For decades, Canada's energy flowed south and nowhere else. Now that's changing. Carney's strategy is simple but profound: to make Canada both a traditional energy power and a leader in clean tech exports. Oil and hydrogen, pipelines and digital grids, a dual identity that turns energy into diplomacy. And at the center of this transformation lies the Trans-Mountain Expansion, the backbone of a broader Made in Canada energy corridor. A system connecting oil, gas, and green hydrogen projects across the country, designed to attract investment and project stability. Corporations like Sinopec and Suncor are already reaping the rewards, earning billions in new export revenue and reinvesting it back into the Canadian energy ecosystem. For Ottawa, this is about more than profit, it's about power. Because every contract signed with Asia or Europe makes Canada less dependent on Washington and more capable of standing on its own. By mid-2025, Canada's energy exports to Asia had reached nearly 3.8 billion Canadian dollars, an 81% increase in just 1 year. That's not a small jump. That's a strategic shift. Analysts have started calling Canada a stability buffer in the global energy system. While other suppliers are torn by conflict or politics, Canada offers something rare: predictability. In a volatile world, that's pure gold. Japan, South Korea, Germany, they're all signing long-term energy contracts with Canada. Not because it's the cheapest, but because it's the most reliable. And reliability, in 2025, is power. Even the OECD now ranks Canada's energy sector among the most transparent and open in the G7, with a Digital Services Trade Restrictiveness Index of 0. That means investors and governments trust Canada, not only to deliver energy, but to do it with consistency and fairness. In an era of tariffs, trade wars, and energy crises, that trust has become Canada's greatest advantage. As Washington turns inward, Ottawa is quietly becoming the calm center of global energy trade. The country once known as America's junior partner is now setting the tone for energy diplomacy. Because in a world full of noise and confrontation, Canada's strength is its stability. While others fight over dominance, Canada is building something far more durable: dependability. And as the United States learns that protectionism can sometimes be the enemy of progress, Canada is proving something the world has forgotten. Real power doesn't come from aggression. It comes from consistency. In an age of volatility, tariffs, and division, Canada isn't shouting to be heard. It's simply standing its ground, and quietly, very quietly, reshaping the global balance of power.